Sometimes transformation comes like the soft sound of a branch touched by the wind. No, it announces its presence. It doesn't demand attention. It just moves what needs to be moved. This is how true change happens. Silent, discreet, patient, like water that molds to the container without losing its essence. There is something profoundly serene about this force that does not force, in this flow that does not drag, but leads. Imagine a moment in which you are alone in front of a river at dawn. The surface mirrors the pale sky, and each ripple seems to whisper stories of all the ways that water is gone. Rain that fell on distant mountains, snow that melted at the touch of spring, mist that rose and disappeared into the air. Nothing in it remains, and yet so everything in it is full. There is a wisdom that awakens when we realize that life it operates in the same way, continually transforming, without ever losing its center, while the modern world encourages us to remain rigid, defined, fixed. Nature reveals another truth. Nothing alive is permanent, and that is precisely why existence breathes. A transformation does not have to be turbulent, can be as smooth as the slide of a leaf over water. It can be minimal, almost invisible, and still change the entire course of our inner path. There are those who fight against this movement, fearing the unknown. But when we feel the change as part of the natural rhythm of life, we realize that we are not being broken. We are being shaped. All restlessness, all doubt, all silence deep is just the invitation for us to return to the flow we have never been in, really far away. If you feel like there is something invisible guiding your days, something that calls for calm while everything seems to run, then this video is for you. Allow yourself to breathe a little slower. Allow yourself to listen. The quiet transformation has an almost imperceptible sound, but when we listen, it shows us that serenity is not the absence of change, but rather the way we walk through it. In the next step of this journey, we will understand why fluidity is the true strength that sustains the world, even when we believe we are lost in the continuous movement of life. Transformation is not an isolated event. It is a rhythm, a pulse that passes through all living things, even when we don't realize it. If we look closely at the world around us, we realize that nothing remains still. The tree trunk ages in silence. The moss advances millimeters a week. The daylight never returns exactly the same. There is constant movement underpinning everything, and yet we never hear it. Movement imposes itself. It just happens. There is a profound beauty in this. The softness not only accompanies change, it enables it. Think of water flowing between rocks. She doesn't fight with the forms she finds. It contours, welcomes, digs little by little. The water is not afraid to change direction, because it knows that its essence is not lost along the way. It's this quiet confidence that makes her so resilient. As it flows, it transforms the world, and at the same time, transforms with it. No, there is resistance, only adaptation. And when we contemplate this simplicity, we realize that our own lives could follow a similar course if we stopped fighting against the inevitable. Change becomes painful when we try to contain it, just like a river dammed by water. Strength, restlessness arises from the desire to remain where we no longer belong, to hold on an ancient form that has already fulfilled its role. But life is not interested in what is not. Breathe more. It invites, at every moment, to make space for the new. Even when this new arrives shrouded in uncertainty, yet it carries the soft energy of a fresh start. Transforming yourself is not losing something. It is allowing something to reveal itself. However, the modern mind has become accustomed to control, whether predictability or answers. But what sustains the world are not certainties but movements. And when we begin to accept this principle, something inside us relaxes. The road before us, feet, stops being a threat and becomes just the natural path of our own unfolding. Transformation stops being an obstacle and becomes a portal. Just as the breeze that crosses the valley changes speed as the mountain rises, without resistance, without effort, we too can learn to change with softness. Life does not require a rush to flourish. It just requires presence. It requires that let us be attentive to the subtle signs that indicate when it is time to stay and when it is time to move on. And above all, it demands that we trust the invisible rhythm that leads, even when we don't understand where we are being led. If this idea resonates with you, it is a sign that something inside has already awakened, maybe a part silently in your spirit. Recognize that transforming yourself is not disorder, but alignment. It is not rupture, but return. With each change, we return a little more to our center, the place where serenity finds the courage. And it is at this meeting point between softness and strength that we continue our journey. No, in the next block, we will enter the territory of purification, the art of cleaning what weighs down, to that transformation can continue to flow without obstacles. There are times when the world seems to create a fog around us, a fog that we don't know how to explain it, but it weighs on our shoulders as if every thought were surrounded by a dense layer. However, if you have ever walked through a forest after rain, know the gentle power of this state. Mist doesn't just hide, it cleans. She collects excess air, rests on the leaves, covers the soil, and returns a new silence, a silence that renews. This also happens within us when we accept transformation as a purification process. Life, in its silent wisdom, creates cycles of accumulation and release. Waves that bring, waves that carry. What we call inner weight is often nothing more than fragments that we have kept for too long. Small pains, old expectations, fears that no longer belong to our path. When we resist letting them go, we become like dammed rivers, immobile within. But when we allow this stagnant water flows again, we realize that purification is not done through effort, and yes, from the opening. Imagine the fine rain falling on an ancient temple. She doesn't try to wash the stones. She simply go. Down, play, follow paths, find gaps. Doing so removes the dust brought by the wind, but without destroying the surface it protects. The purification truth is never aggressive. She acts like water, patient, constant, intimate. And how much? The more we welcome this softness, the more we recognize that we are part of the same cycle, natural renewal. There is a space within each person that waits for this silent rebirth. One space that cannot be filled by ready answers, nor by decisions based in fear. It expands when we silence. It grows when we accept that we don't. We need to load everything. And it blossoms when we realize that letting go doesn't mean losing something essential. It just means clearing the way for the new to find space to be born. Purification does not happen when we demand change. It happens when we stop to prevent change from occurring. It's a return inward, as if we gather the light that we leave dispersed throughout the world. This light, when rediscovered, reveals that our essence was never tarnished, just hid under layers of stories that didn't serve us more. You may have felt this when breathing deeply near a fountain, or when touching the cold water of a river that runs down the mountain. There is something about this contact that awakens the feeling of fresh start, something that whispers, let go. You don't have to take everything with you. When we hear this call, even if for brief moments, the spirit finds a fertile ground to flourish. Again, and it is precisely at this point, between cleansing and rebirth, that transformation finds its place, more natural rhythm. In the next block, we will walk through the human territory of resistance, tendency to harden, to fear, to hold back, and we'll see how softness can return to his heart what he tried to protect for so long. There is a part of us that insists on remaining still, even when everything around us asks us to change. It is the part that fears losing what it knows, even if the known no longer exists in us. Sustain. This impulse of rigidity arises from the desire for security. But paradoxically, the more we try to fix ourselves, the more fragile we become. A tree that never bends in the wind, it is always the first to fall. The one who learns to give in remains firm even in longer storms. We live in a time that praises control. We believe that we will only be fine when all the pieces are in the exact place we imagined. And so, without realizing it, we build internal fortresses that isolate us more than they protect us. The anxiety arises from this disproportionate effort to hold the course of life in one's own hands, as who tries to stop a river from moving forward. But no river stops being a river because a stone tries to contain him. He just finds another way. Human resistance manifests itself in subtle gestures. Sometimes it is the refusal to accept that a cycle has ended. Other times, it is the habit of feeding thoughts that we no longer serve. It can also be an attempt to maintain old relationships, identities, or dreams which, inside, have already dissolved. We resist because we believe that stopping fighting, it means giving up on ourselves. But the truth is that the constant struggle is what keeps us apart from our own center. When we learn to flow, we don't abandon our values. We just abandon the rigidity that prevents our expansion. Flowing is allowing life to show us paths that we wouldn't have imagined. It's walking with openness without losing your axis. It is to recognize that we are not immovable stone, but a stream of water that is always renewed. Ness understanding, each difficulty stops being a wall and becomes a curve in the road, something that can be smoothly contoured. And interestingly, when we stop resisting, a deep stillness sets in. The mind makes it less noisy. The heart becomes less anxious. The body breathes more naturalness. It's as if the internal world finally stops fighting the tides outside and begin to move with them. This harmony is not born from a great effort, but the renunciation of excessive effort. The peaceful transformation, which accompanies the natural flow, can be felt as a return home. Even when we don't know where we are going, we feel that we are moving at the right pace. And little by little we discover that strength is not in remain rigid, but remain available to change. If at any point during this block you felt a slight relief, as if something inside relaxed, this is a sign that the flow has started to touch your inner surface. In the next block, let's delve deeper into this art of transforming without forcing, the invisible path where softness becomes our greatest ally. There is a way of walking through the world that is not based on strength, but on listening. One way in which each step is guided by something we don't see but feel, like the wind which, when touching the face, reveals a direction without ever pointing it out. This is the movement of calm transformation. It is not born from the attempt to control, but from the ability to noticing when life opens up a silent space for us to move forward. Forcing is always easier to recognize. It has the sound of effort, of urgency, of fear of that if we don't do something immediately, everything will fall apart. But the deeper path rarely requires haste. He moves like the breeze between the mountains. He changes intensity, changes direction, and yet remains part of the same breath that sustains the world. When we observe this rhythm, we realize that transforming with smoothness is a gesture of confidence, confidence in the course, and confidence in ourselves. Imagine a mountain at dawn. The sun has not yet touched its top, but the light has already set, insinuates itself down the slopes. Nothing in her rushes. The mountain does not try to catch the first ray, does not force the day to rise faster. It just remains, open to whatever arrives. And yet thus, it transforms every minute, in color, in shadow, in temperature, in silence. There are a profound lesson in this way of existing. True changes do not need to be pushed. They happen when there is space for them to happen. Within us, this space arises when we stop insisting on a single direction, when we stop looking for immediate answers and allow the spirit to find its own rhythm. Smooth transformation doesn't operate like a sledgehammer. It operates like a loving erosion, which dissolves excess, which softens what has hardened, which frees what was arrested. Every small change creates an invisible path, which can only be perceived by those who have the courage to slow down. And it is precisely in this slowing down that we rediscover natural wisdom. Life always gives us signs, a discomfort that persists, an intuition that returns, a door that closes with more determination than we would like. If we try to force what we no longer receives, wear and tear becomes inevitable. But when we accept to follow through the space that opens, however small, however mysterious, something in us silently aligns to the flow that sustains existence. If this perception has touched you in some way, it is because the spirit has already begun to walk alongside change. And this is the second mandatory CTA. If this idea resonates with you, it is a sign that something inside has already awakened. This awakening is discreet, but profound. He reveals that we do not need to transform the world with our hands. We just need to transform our posture towards it. In the next block, we will explore what comes from this surrender, the fruits of impermanence, the serenity that comes when we stop fearing movement and start walking with him. Impermanence is often seen as a threat, but it is, in fact, the birthplace of everything that blooms. Nothing alive sustains itself in eternal repetition. Is the movement that transforms, It is time that reveals hidden layers. It is the cycle that allows something new find space to exist. When we accept this, we begin to reap fruits that before seemed unattainable, fruits that are born not from strength, but from dedication. One of these fruits is lightness, not the superficial lightness of what is fleeting, but that which it sets in when we stop carrying what no longer belongs to us. Life, in its silent generosity, always invites us to put down our old baggage. But, out of habit or fear, we insist on keeping them close. When we finally let them go, we realize that lightness is not the absence of responsibility. It is the presence of clarity. It is walk, knowing that each step is supported by who we are now, and not by what we already have. We went. Another fruit is serenity. She doesn't arrive when everything is resolved, but when we stop demanding that everything is. Amid the inevitable changes, we discover that there are a part of us that remains intact, a silent center that does not depend on external circumstances. When we touch this center, even for a moment, we understand that impermanence does not rob us of stability. It offers us flexibility, and flexibility is one of the purest forms of strength. A deep sense of presence also blossoms from this acceptance. When we stop fearing what might change tomorrow, we immerse ourselves in what exists today. The attention becomes fuller, the gaze clearer, the heart more open. Little things recover their beauty. The sound of the water, the shadow of the leaves, the breath that calms down late afternoon. Life stops being a race and becomes a dialogue in the which we listen as much as we act. And there is also wisdom, which sprouts as a late but firm fruit. Wisdom is born when we realize that everything that goes away makes room for something that can only exist because that thing gone. Like the tree that loses leaves to store energy, or the river that changes course to stay alive, we too become more whole when we accept the dance of things that come and go. We can't hold the wind, but we can learn to walk with him. Transforming calmly means allowing this dance to continue without interruption. No, it's passivity. It's trust. It is understanding that each change carries a seed of growth, even when we don't yet see its shape. And when we look back, we realize that everything we feared losing was exactly what gave us space to grow. In the next block, we will bring all these steps together in a poetic closure, a return to the spirit of transformation that began silently, crossed mountains internal and now opens like a horizon before you. There is a moment, just before the sun sets, when everything seems suspended. The colors they dissolve slowly. The sounds become more spaced out. The air seems to breathe for us. In this moment, nature reveals something we rarely notice. Nothing really ends. Everything, it just changes shape. The day bows to night, the light rests, the silence expands, and yet, nothing loses its essence. This is also the transformation within us. We are never interrupted. We just continued in another direction. If you look back, you might notice small steps that once seemed irrelevant, but now form a path. Nothing that happened stopped shaping who you have become, and nothing that will come will stop expanding its presence in the world. The tranquility of change arises precisely from this understanding. We are not at drift. We are being guided by the same rhythm that moves rivers, branches, breezes, and stars. There is a secret order within the apparent chaos, and when we tune into it, it stops being a fight and becomes communion. Allow yourself to feel, in this moment, the serenity that accompanies this perception. Each emotion, every doubt, every new clarity is part of the same flow. You don't need rush anything. You don't need to prove anything. No need to hold back what is already ready for leave. Peaceful transformation happens when we trust that what must remain, it will remain, and what must follow will find its own way out. And if something has touched your spirit up until now, let it blossom without rushing. The real change does not require you to fully understand it. It just requires you to be willing to walk alongside her. There is a deep stillness in the simple act of allowing. And when we allow it, the internal world rearranges itself like leaves carried by the breeze, each one finding its natural place, effortlessly. Now, as we close this journey, I leave a direct invitation. Sign up and continue walking with us along the path of the soul. Each video is a portal, each reflection a crossing, each silence an invisible master waiting to be heard. And as we close this cycle, I leave a question that gently echoes on the horizon. What if what we call destiny is just the whisper of the kami who give us, have they been with you since birth?